Dobar dan. Apologies, because that's as far as my language skill goes, so thank you for listening to me in English. First of all, to say thank you very much for this wonderful invitation, Madam President and Daniela as well. It's absolutely an honour and a privilege for me to be here today. And what a very hard act to follow, that wonderful presentation that we got in relation to the history of the organisation, which is really important and valuable in order to learn lessons going forward. And is it any wonder you have a huge, proud history going forward? And I know from meeting you all briefly, and I know from working with these ladies as well, that certainly your organisation is in very safe hands going forward. It's incredible the amount of passion and enthusiasm that you all have. And as well, I want to say as well, I think this is one of the most professional conferences that I've been at, and it just shows the amazing skill that nurses have to be able to turn their hands to be the best conference organisers in the world. And I've been to many conferences, so it's a wonderful pleasure to be here and to see it to be so professional, so dynamic, and you can be only proud of what you have achieved and what you have delivered here, but as well as that, all the work you are doing. And I hope this morning, sorry, I'm just looking for, oh yes, that's it, sorry, couldn't see it. And by the way, I was told because I'm so short that I wasn't to stand behind there because you mightn't see me. Which isn't a bad thing, I don't know. But anyway, however, but I follow what I'm told to do in relation to it. So this morning here and in a very short time, what I'm hoping to do is really to show how all of you influence policy by being a member of your association, not only on a European level, but also on a global level. And it's really important in relation to what happens, at European level and global, because that impacts what your government's decisions are in the future. So we have to be very clever, not only keeping our focus on from a national basis from the organisation, but strategically to position nurses in the future so that from the European level we look at that as well. So I'm briefly just going to give you a quick feel in relation to our work on the European level. And first of all, I do have to say, because I work very closely with your president, and it's absolutely incredible. I can't tell you how much she is valued and respected at European level. And I know sometimes in your own country people don't appreciate or realise the amount of work that you do, to influence nursing on a global level. But you are so well represented. And the amount of work that is put in, the amount of time, and Daniela as well, in relation to working with, we have 36 member countries and influencing that policy, and we are always listening to what work you are doing and what you are achieving and how can we make it better for all of you going forward. So you have certainly two amazing leaders on European and of course on the international stage as well. And I'm not just saying that because I'm here today, I genuinely mean it. The amount of work that they do for your organisation, but the amount of work that they do for us at European level, which makes us all stronger together on that level. Also as well, I couldn't resist, maybe people saw me last night trying to take photographs, and what an amazing team of people. Not only, and sorry, they're not the best photographs because I'm not the photographer, but we did get the photographer in relation to going forward. But I just could only commend not only the scientific committee, but also the organising committee. Wow, what a team of people you are. You're quite incredible to achieve all that. Not to mention that some of you only have had 2 hours sleep, and I don't know how you all look so amazing and wonderful going forward. But like, be proud of all you've delivered and achieved. It's really an exceptional conference that you have delivered here. So I can absolutely say it's world class. Okay, just to give you an overview in relation to the European Federation of Nurses, which I have the privilege of being president, but I wouldn't be president without you, without being elected by your organisation and all the other 36 members countries as well. So I think it's a huge responsibility in relation to ensuring that we secure the future. As I said, there's 3 million nurses. We are the independent voice of nursing, and we're very strategically placed. We have an office in Brussels, so we're right beside the European Parliament and the Commission, so we have direct access into that in order to influence policy. And you can see the mission there is to strengthen the status and practice of the profession of nursing and benefit health for the citizens as well as the nursing profession itself. Now, when we look, and you know, on a national basis and locally on a basis, there's always many things that influence how you operate and how you practice, and that's no different on the international scale and on the European level as well. There's many policy drivers that you have to factor in relation to trying to drive policy forward. So here I've only given examples of the political. So there's been a huge economic crisis as we have experienced across Europe. Some countries are coming out of that and there'll be better times, but we lost so many things while that was happening. We know that particularly in relation to Brexit and how Europe may be becoming a little unstable and how that's going to influence nurses being mobility across being able to get experience in different countries and how that will impact on the profession. But I'm very pleased to say that the Royal College of Nursing, regardless of Brexit or that anything else happens, they are our members of the European Federation of Nurses, and they will remain our members of the Federation of Nurses. And like every organisation is equal, but it's very important that we stay together collectively in solidarity, regardless of the political outcome. And then there's also society drivers. So we're looking at the quality and safety of healthcare, we're looking at timely and cost-effective access, and of course the changing disease patterns as well that is outgoing. And then from a professional point of view, scopes of practice are always changing, and I know in the introduction there in Ireland we brought in nurse and midwife prescribing, which I led out on, and it's nearly 10 years ago, but that was a huge change in breaking the glass ceiling that every nurse and midwife in Ireland, if they so wished, could actually prescribe, because it was felt as though it was moving into kind of the medical role, but we brought it in order to give better patient care going forward. And while you are driving things in many ways, you're in an advanced position in so many ways, and then you find within countries different things. So different countries are at different levels in relation to what they achieve and the opportunity to change practice going forward. So there's been a huge paradigm shift over the last number of years, and we can see there we went from an industrial society to an information society, national economy, to a world economy, and these all have influences. So we also have, there's an increasing emphasis on the transferability of skills, and that's all having an impact at a European level in relation to practice. And of course there has been significant changes in relation to the labour market, particularly for women. And if we look in my own country, it was only, I know it sounds, we're talking about history, it sounds to young people a very long time ago, but in the 70s it was the first time that nurses were able to marry in and keep their jobs, because once you got married you weren't allowed to practice anymore. And only yesterday I heard a news report, if you look at Switzerland, which has all the international organisations in it, it has the United Nations, the World Health Organization, and their women were marching in relation to, they only got the vote I think in the 1970s, They only got paid maternity leave in the 1990s. And so it's quite incredible. So, you know, you have many achievements ahead of many other countries that sometimes, because I come from a small country myself, sometimes you think that other countries are further ahead. So you're making great strides in relation to, but there's still always more work to do. So policies influencing practice are happening outside this country, and that's why it's so important that you're represented at a European level so we can influence those policies going forward, because that's where your governments make decisions at the World Health Organization, in the European Commission, and they're making policies decisions in relation to nursing going forward. So if we go back even as far as 10 years, we see there was the policy in relation to task shifting. And while these policies at the time kind of sound very positive, what happens is then sometimes governments use these policies then to maybe downgrade nursing and things like that. So we have to be very careful in relation to how policies develop. And then there was a move towards interprofessional collaboration, having a collaborative ready workforce. There was the WHO Code of Practice in relation to ensuring that there was a sustainable workforce and people could ethically move in relation to their work. We have a number of documents that have the strategic directions of nursing and midwifery, not only from WHO global, but also regionally as well, that we need to be influencing and feeding in information all the time. And of course, there's a huge move towards universal health cover. And if I'm really honest, is you have to track what the topics are for governments and then use those topics in order to influence. So if you put universal health cover in every strategy that you're doing, it lines up in relation to how they're thinking of funding healthcare going forward in the future. And really, look, if you go back on that fantastic history that we just heard, and we have been told for many years all across the world, well, you know, nurses, you're not at degree level, or you don't have the evidence base, and now we have moved into all of this, and we have the evidence, and we're all highly educated, and still in all we're struggling in relation to pay and conditions. And we have all, and this is only one example of a document that says we're the largest group of health professionals globally, and if we can practice to our full scope of practice, we can accelerate in relation to innovation. And we know that nursing innovation makes it possible to be cost effective, and we know that nurse-led models of care optimize healthcare, improve access to healthcare, reduce pain and suffering, and saving the health system millions and millions. This is all evidence-based, that nurses and midwives across the world make such a difference in relation to this. And we can see the move towards nurse-led, who enable complex chronic decisions. They're looking at diabetes. They're the main drivers in relation to screening programs and prevention going forward. And there's many documents from European and a global level that we have to keep track of to ensure that we keep an eye on what our governments are doing and what the policymakers are doing. And one of them, just as an example of the most recent ones that your governments will look at, is one of the OECD reports, which has a collaborative analysis of the health status of the EU citizens and has a report on each country. So it's important that we keep an eye on that. And it is interesting that in your early days you had a magazine in relation to mental health. I thought that was very interesting, because here we have the OECD, and it's kind of for the first time that they've dedicated a chapter to mental health. So governments are finally catching up with the importance of what nurses think going forward. And also as well, it shows the key trends and the risk factors and the issues in relation to effectiveness, accessibility, and also reliance going forward. So I think Howard was here from ICN, and he would have talked about, you know, the global challenges, and there's going to be a shortfall of 18 million health workers by 2030. And that's an incredible amount. And it will have huge implications as well, because you have a new dynamic, young workforce that are very eloquent with language skills, are very well qualified and educated, and the world is their oyster. And how we manage all that going forward is very important, so that populations within countries are served. And you can see that according to the World Health Organization, all roads lead to universal health cover. So this is the hot topic at the moment in relation to it. So you can see the development goals, you can see antimicrobial resistance, health security, primary health care, and non-communicable diseases going forwards. And this is Dr. Tesra, who is the Director General of WHO at the moment. So he's the top man globally in relation to health policies. And he said that governments must see jobs for nurses and midwives not as a cost, but as an investment in sustainable development. And it's really great that a world global leader is taking that position on nursing. And it was, as Daniela announced earlier on, that it's really important that when we think that next year is going to be the year of the nurse, and so we're moving into hopefully a whole new dynamic and a value for the profession going forward. And then just from the European level, of course, I have the privilege to be on the board of the Nursing Now campaign, and Lord Nigel Crisp sends his congratulations and sends you all good wishes in relation to your Nursing Now campaign. And I can't believe all the amazing t-shirts. And I will say, and I'm going to get on to Lord Nigel Crisp, and I'm going to tell him, I think that's the most amazing logo. I think you've absolutely done the best logo that I've seen in all the countries that I've been to. It's really creative and clever, so well done on that. So, and congratulations to you all by becoming the lead in your region in relation to this campaign. It's really important because it puts the focus on it. So this whole global movement is coming together, and they're coming together for 2020 to make real difference going forward. So it is a 3-year plan, and we'll end next year, but if you go into then ICN then after that. And it's all about improving health globally by raising the profile of nursing midwifery and showing the difference it can actually make going forward. And there's a number of aims, which include universal health cover, you can see is covered, and to promote and develop leaders going forward is really important, and you know more. But just to say, my sincere congratulations to you all on becoming the Nursing Now campaign lead in your region. Really, it's fantastic. So you can see that you're at the cutting edge of everything that's happening, both European and globally, due to the great leadership that you have and your great participation as an organisation. Then we have a lot of European policies that also is influencing, and we have a strategic directions that's up in 2020. Again, this is another document that we have to ensure that the Croatian Nurses Association do influence that going forward, so that it can influence how you practice locally. And just to say that there's a number of elements that EFN are focused on, and we work through the European Commission, the European Parliament, and the Council of Europe in relation to patients, and of course centrally to nurses' role. And we may as well be in a reality, as I said, the economic crisis has had a huge impact. My own organisation, our members lost 15% of their salary over a period of time. So we have dropped to such a difficult base, and the environments have become very poor, that we have a lot of work to do to bring us back to where we were maybe even 10 years ago. But we have to be resilient and in solidarity, and that's the importance of being part of the membership, so that collectively as an organisation that you can actually put pressure on. I know it was said that you have 35,000 nurses, but what a powerful collective voice if you stand in solidarity with one another to make a difference. And I know it's not easy, and it's the same battles that go on in other countries. And you can see from this slide, you know, the impact that all the cuts had, and what it resulted in, that nurses all over Europe were working harder in order to maintain quality and standards while being asked to provide more for less. And it's typical of nursing, you know, that we always provide more for less, and then we get left with having to provide more for less. And we're always the ones that are driving quality. And very quickly, just to say that it has a huge impact not only on policy, but on regulation, practice, and social economic welfare. The key lobby points that EFN look at were focused, because we can't focus on everything, so we have to be very strategic on what elements that we look for. And it's your organisation that makes decisions at the General Assembly, which your leaders attend, and you collectively make the decision on what our policy objectives and what our work plan is going forward. And that always lines up with what you're trying to do at a national level. So it's about quality and safety, it's about workforce, and it's about mobility, Directive 55. And of course, throughout Europe, you have to watch as well, what are the big policies that also attract money, and how is the funding system going? And the big policy is called the European Pillar of Social Rights, and there's 20 principles within that. But of course, anything that you do, we can't tackle the 20 principles. So the General Assembly of EFN would have decided, that's all the members, that we would look at education, wages, healthcare, and long-term care. And this is the implementation of the European Pillar of Social Rights. And we have to be pragmatic about it, and we have to ensure that we have expertise in order to drive it forward. Now, the European Commission and the Parliament and the Council, it's all very complicated. So, and that's why you have such wonderful people representing you in Europe. And I don't really want to go into major detail, but you can see that there's a whole system thing that goes on that's tied up with money, that's tied up with governments, and we really keep and monitor that in relation to making a difference. And what that's called is the European semester, and it's a cycle which they go through in relation to gathering information from countries. And our priority as EFN is to ensure that the information from Croatia and the other regions around, like Slovenia, that information is right and correct, and it's focused on nursing and midwifery going forward. Because if the information going into this cycle isn't right, the policy funding that comes out of it won't be aligned. And this whole cycle then looks at what is happening across Europe, and then makes decisions on what is the policy decisions for all the governments across Europe in relation to health, and then what needs to be funded going forward. So it's really important that we keep an eye in relation to that. And then just to say as well, EFN have been working for the last 20 years on really on the EU directive, and as you all know, it's to facilitate the free movement of European citizens, which of course, and to make sure that the standard of qualification is equivalent. And I suppose what it's done is as well for countries that were maybe haven't got the opportunities, and even though they wanted to have higher education, forced governments into ensuring that if they wanted to go forward and if they want to be members of the European Union, that they have to come up to a standard. So it's a really strategic tool for nursing and midwifery. What we have to battle, even though we have it in, is to ensure that governments don't start then to decide to downgrade that going forward. So it's a constant battle, and history in the background will show you that for anything that we do, it's the same issues, but you constantly have to keep on top of in relation to going forward. And you know that there's a huge piece in relation to continuing professional development as well going forward. So we have a lot of documents, and you'll see them on our website, and they go from the workforce and antimicrobial resistance. There's a new one in relation to salaries. So this is all work that the Croatian nurses, your president and Daniela, feed into the European Nursing Federation, in order to inform policies going forward. So collectively, your voice is being heard in Europe because we're getting, you know, such valuable and great leadership and great information to go forward. We're also involved in a number of Horizon 2020 research because we have to as well be driving the research going forward. And I've just listed two, which are the two recent ones that started in January. It's amazing when you look at research. Everybody wants EFN as a partner, which is a very good thing because you're our member going forward, because it does represent 3 million nurses across Europe. And for governments and for researchers, if they have EFN in as a partner, it makes a significant difference to their credibility. So we provide, but we are very discerning about who we decide to partner with going forward. So there's a Smart for Health project, as you can see there, and the electronic health record, which is really important so that patients as well can transfer across with their records across Europe. And just to say, and I'm nearly getting there, in relation to, there was a report just there at the end of 2018 from the Wish Foundation, and Lord Nigel Chris from the Nursing Now campaign authored it as well on behalf of the campaign. And the key messages in relation to having an expansion of high quality care that's been lobbied by governments is that investing in nursing and midwifery is really important. Maximising the scope, so having a wide scope of practice so we can benefit from all the wonderful educated nurses. And in practical terms, it talks about creating more nurse-led clinics, particularly for non-communicable diseases, enabling nurses to play a leading role in primary care, development of midwifery and mental and maternal child and adolescent service, greater role in the promotion and prevention of health literacy, and more specialisation in nurses. And you will see that Croatia and Tanya, I don't know where you're in the picture, but that was the launch of the Nursing Now campaign. So EFN are the European lead. So by you being our member, you're the European lead of this campaign going forward. And so moving forward, and this is nearly my final slide, supported by the appropriate policies, legislation, education, leadership, management, resources and research, nurses can expand and develop their roles. It seems like a lot of things, but you're doing all of this already within your organisation. And we can respond, therefore, better to patients' needs, we can strengthen their influence, and we can increase the impact on improving health. And then, just finally, to say that the final thought, it's not the strongest of species that survive, nor the most intelligent, according to Charles Darwin, but the one most responsive to change. And I think there's no more than a dynamic, professional group of people than nurses who change every day of their lives, who can turn their hand to everything and anything, including organising an amazing conference. So, there's great credit in relation to nursing and how we survive and evolve, and really important to value your history, value your working together, and your solidarity growing. So, Val.